My name is Harold Bennett. I'm 97 years old, and I can feel my time thinning out. That isn't fear talking. It's just something you understand when you've watched almost a century pass through your hands. The nights are quieter now. The mornings arrive slower. I wake up before the sun and sit in the dark, listening to the house settle around me. When you reach the end of life, memories don't line up in order. They come in flashes, small scenes, moments you didn't know were important when they were happening. There is one decision I made, the calmest decision of my life, that changed everything. It didn't look dramatic. It didn't feel heroic. No one congratulated me, but it reshaped the years I had left. I was born in 1928, grew up during hard times. My father believed a man proved himself by how much he could endure. My mother believed love was something you showed through sacrifice. I carried both of those ideas into adulthood without ever questioning them. By the time I was 35, I had a wife, 2 children, and a job that demanded more of me every year. I loved my family. I want to say that clearly. But love and presence are not the same thing. I worked long hours because I believed financial security was the purest form of protection. I believed being a good father meant providing. I believed being a strong husband meant not complaining, not slowing down, not sitting still. I missed small things, a school play, a birthday dinner that started without me, conversations that happened while I was still at the office chasing another promotion. I always told myself there would be more time. That's the quiet lie most of us live with. The belief that the important conversations can wait. When my wife Margaret would sit across from me at night, telling me about the children's day, I would nod while thinking about numbers, contracts, deadlines. I heard her voice, but I wasn't really listening. I didn't notice a loneliness building inside our home. Success came, bigger house, better car, more recognition. But something subtle was slipping away at the same time, and I didn't have the language for it then. Years later, my son left for college. I remember helping him load his car. He hugged his mother tightly. When he hugged me, it was firm, respectful, but brief. That hug stayed with me, not because it was cold, because it felt distant. My daughter grew up quieter. She stopped telling me long stories about her day. I assumed that was just part of growing up. I was wrong. It wasn't distance created in one moment. It was built slowly, over years of being physically present, but emotionally distracted. That's something you only see clearly when you're much older. By the time I was 68, Margaret was diagnosed with cancer. Suddenly the calendar didn't feel endless anymore. I retired early. I told myself I would finally slow down. But slowing down because you have to is very different from choosing to slow down while you still can. I sat beside her hospital bed one afternoon, sunlight cutting across the room in thin stripes. She looked at me and said softly, "You're here." There was no anger in her voice, just surprise. That sentence broke something open inside me. I had been here all along, and yet I hadn't. When she passed, the house became unbearably quiet. For the first time in my adult life, there was nothing pulling me forward. No deadlines, no meetings, no noise, just silence. And that silence forced me to see what I had spent decades avoiding. The cost of always being busy, the cost of postponing connection, the cost of believing peace comes after achievement. One night, sitting alone at the kitchen table where Margaret used to wait for me, I made the calmest decision of my life. I decided to stop outrunning my own existence. Not tomorrow, not after one more goal, right then. That was the moment everything began to change. The next morning I didn't turn on the television. I didn't reach for distraction. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the light move across the floor. It felt uncomfortable at first, almost wasteful, like I should be doing something productive. But I stayed there. That simple act, choosing stillness, began reshaping my days. I called my son, not because I needed something, but because I wanted to hear about his life, really hear it. There was a pause when he answered, as if he was surprised I was calling just to talk. We spoke longer than we ever had before, about his work stress, about his own fears as a father, about the pressure he felt to succeed. As he spoke, I heard my younger self in his voice. That's when I realized something painful. The patterns we don't question, we pass down. I told him the truth. I told him I had been afraid most of my life, afraid of not being enough, afraid of being seen as small, afraid of failing my family financially. He didn't judge me, he just listened. That conversation didn't erase the past, but it built something new in the present. I made the same effort with my daughter. We looked through old photo albums together. I noticed how often I was in the background of pictures, standing tall, smiling, but somehow distant. She told me she used to wait for the sound of my car pulling into the driveway. She hoped I would ask about her day. Most days I hadn't. There is a specific kind of regret that arrives late in life. It isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It simply sits beside you and asks you to look at it honestly. For years, I misunderstood what makes a meaningful life. I thought it was built on achievement, status, measurable success. But at 97, looking back over nearly a century, the memories that hold weight are different. They are ordinary moments, a quiet dinner, a long conversation, a shared laugh. Sitting beside someone without rushing away. I began volunteering at the same library Margaret once loved. I shelved books. I listened to strangers. I allowed conversations to take their natural time instead of checking the clock. Time felt different when I stopped fighting it. It felt deeper, slower, full. The calm decision I made didn't make headlines. It didn't rebuild lost years, but it changed the texture of the ones I had left. And that matters more than I can explain. Now, at 97, I sit in this same house with fewer possessions and far fewer ambitions. I don't feel the urge to prove anything anymore. If there is one quiet truth I've come to understand at the end of life, it's this. Peace was never waiting at the finish line. It was available in the pauses I kept postponing. I found it late, but I did find it. If you've listened this far, thank you for sharing this silence with me. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to respond. But if something in this story feels familiar, if there's a part of your life you've been outrunning, you can sit with that for a moment. I'll be here, listening to the clock, grateful for the quiet I finally chose.